Okay, well, thanks everybody for coming out this evening and fighting your way through the snow. It's certainly my way. It's back on again, so that should be fun. But good to see so many have made it through the snow to come to this lecture this evening, which is sponsored, as always, by the School of Mathematics and Physics here at Queen's University. So I'm just going to run through a few small admin-y things, and then we'll have a little look at the night sky, and then of course we've got the main event, which is our two for the price of one main speakers this evening, talking about the eclipse earlier this year in America. So now then, here we go. My computer is just running, had a big update last week and is running ever so slow now. So you press a button and suddenly nothing happens, which is a bit disconcerting. So anyway, I said last time I wasn't going to nag you about, membership fees anymore, and I'm not. I'm just going to tell you that Stardust is on its way, and if you've paid, you get. So that's it. And well done, Andy, for getting that out. That's I think that's going in the post sometime this week or so, so you should have that before Christmas. Keep an eye on our website, irishastro.org. I kind of put stuff up there, what we're doing and what's coming up and things like that. It's an interesting place. And also our forum where we coordinate the observing. And I'll talk a little bit more about the observing in a moment. Then also we've got, there's some live updates on Aurora and weather and stuff there as well, just to keep you informed of that. And also our Facebook group, our fairly active Facebook group. There's quite a lot of interesting stuff turns up on that from members. It's actually got over 900 members now, which it's not bad. It's one of those things where quite a small proportion actually do anything, but that number of people are reading it, which is good to hear. So keep in touch, because that's how we get the information out to you. Observing. Our next observing nights are Friday and Saturday. And actually the weather for Friday is looking quite reasonable, believe it or not. Saturday, reasonable but less so. I will converse with Ivan before that, and we'll put out by the usual methods of the forum and the Facebook group what we're doing. So you can find out there if there's any observing down at Delamont Country Park this coming weekend. Theoretically, we've penciled in the following weekend. That works extremely well for in terms of phases of the moon and all sorts of stuff like that. It doesn't work quite so well for who might be at a Christmas party at that time, but we'll wait and see there. We might get a splendid night, you never know. And those are the dates for January 19th, 20th, and 26th, 27th. So that's all next year. Our exhibition at Carrickfergus, the Heavens Above exhibition, is still running, and that's going on until the 6th of January, and it's really, really good. Got some great feedback from people who've been there. If you haven't been there, try and get down to it. It's in the Civic Centre and Museum in the middle of Carrickfergus, and it's again these exhibitions. Even if you've been to one before, yes, it is the same 40 pictures, but there's a load of other stuff there. Space memorabilia from Andy and Terry. And the guys at the observatory sent a whole load of kit down as well, antique telescopes and stuff, and it's a really good exhibition. Very pleased with it. So that's our exhibition. Just some upcoming stuff. The New Year party. If you haven't got your flyer for the New Year party, it's just got a little form to fill in. There's a whole pile of them on the end of the bench at the front, just there. The party. Usual arrangement, it's a meal at McBride's in Comber at 5:30, and then moving on to the Tudor Cinema for 7:30. And the film this year is Hidden Figures, which is a very interesting film. I haven't seen it myself, and it's about the early days of NASA and some of the people specifically who were involved in that, doing stuff like calculations for how you go to the moon and things. So that's a great evening out. 10th, Wednesday the 10th, which is, I suppose, in 4 weeks' time from now. It's actually our next lecture here. And we've got Brian McGavin coming up from Galway. He's the chair of Galway Astronomy Club, and he came to us once before. He did a very good talk. He's a very good speaker and a lovely guy. And he's talking about Einstein made relatively simple. Which should be good. And 2 weeks after that, Terry has pulled off a bit of a coup, to be frank. I'm very impressed. Professor Carl Murray is coming over from London to talk to us, and he is an absolute authority on the Cassini mission. and this is an absolute not to be missed night. So he'll come over and talk to us then. That's the 24th of January. So we're getting quite ahead there because that's 6 weeks' time. The other thing you need to start thinking about now, if you go to the website here, nisciencefestival.com, the tickets for a lot of events in that festival are now on sale, 15th to 25th of Feb. The highlight, of course, is the audience with Chris Hadfield, but there are many other things there of interest too, and they're all good. I always try and get to a couple of them myself, and always very impressed with the events they put on. So that's the NI Science Festival. Now then, today is a little anniversary, and it was 2 years ago today exactly that Tim Peake got a ride on a Soyuz up to the International Space Station, and here he is in the Soyuz spacecraft, and here he is actually on the International Space Station there. And here, see, the thing about this day 2 years ago started one of our members, I think probably about our youngest member, Hayden, on his journey, because his mum tells me that up to that point he was just a quiet little boy who didn't quite know what he wanted to be interested in, and then suddenly he saw Tim Peake's spacecraft taking off and counted down the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 blast off with Tim Peake, and he's been into space ever since. Hayden decided at age 6 that space was his thing, and that's 2 years ago today. And here's actually Hayden having, I think that's his space helmet, is that autographed there by Tim Peake himself. So and he's actually, in those 2 years, he's met more astronauts than I have in 56. So there you go. So that's the Tim Peake second anniversary. And one other thing, just before we look at the stars, Derek has given me this page here out of the world-renowned optical dealers, Lidl. They're doing their telescope offers again. I would say there are 3 things on this page. One is the Bresser Skylux telescope. Then there's also a spotting scope and a pair of zoom binoculars. Now, I would steer clear of the binoculars and the spotting scope for anything astronomical. The amount of light they let through is just too tiny. And actually, I did make the mistake myself of buying the zoom binoculars several years ago. And it's one of those things where you're looking down a really distant hole, which gets smaller when you zoom in. So they're not really terribly recommended. But the telescope is a pretty good one. Not quite as good as it used to be, because it used to you come with an equatorial mount, and it now comes with an alt-azimuth, which is a bit but actually simpler to use. So if you're a complete beginner, then maybe that's better. 80 quid, and it's one of the few cheap telescopes I would say is probably worth it. So thanks for that information, Derek. I'll give you that back. Okay, we'll look at a few things going on in the sky. I'll turn the lights down a little bit further, just so we can see what's going on. And the sun is almost spotless. There is a little thing here called 2691 that's very, very faint. In fact, you can't even see on that big picture where it is. We've now, since we last discussed this, the percentage of spotless days this year has gone up again. Was 23, now 27% of all days are spotless. Not quite as extreme as we got to in 2009 at the very bottom of the cycle, but I think mostly solar cycle 24 is a thing of the past pretty much now. It did have a little bit of a resurgence earlier in the year, but doesn't look like it anymore. There is a coronal hole, a bit of a coronal hole on the sun, which means there's a stream of solar particles headed towards the Earth, expected to get here tomorrow. No moon, but the weather forecast, I'm afraid, isn't that great. But it's possible. Just keep an eye on the web page. We have an Aurora page there that sort of collects together some of the important stats, and you can see when we're likely to have an aurora that we can see this far south. I'll talk about the planets for a bit, and actually, you might think that this is a bit daft, me talking about the planets, because to all intents and purposes, there aren't any at the moment. But they're still there, but not really good to see. For example, Mercury has disappeared, coming close to going right behind the sun. Likewise, Venus. Mars and Jupiter are both visible first thing in the morning. If you get up at sort of 7 o'clock or so, before sunrise and look sort of above and to the right of where the sun would come up, You can see Mars and Jupiter quite easily. Saturn again has disappeared into the evening sunset. Uranus and Neptune we looked at a few weeks ago, and they're actually quite easy to see at the moment. In fact, they're the easiest planets to see by a long way. And the ISS, evening passes, there's just a couple more left, and they're low passes of the evening pass set. The morning passes start on the 28th of December and run through to the 13th of January. So as usual, the best ones to see are sort of round about the middle of that period, so sort of 5th or 6th of January or so would be a really good time to catch a morning pass of the ISS, but it does mean you have to get up in the morning. I'm going to look forward a little bit, just next year. I'm going to look at next year. The situation does improve with planets next year. And just a few sort of quick things I did here. If we go to this day in March, 7 p.m. in the evening, just after sunset, we will have quite a nice apparition of both Venus and Mercury as the sun sets. There, that's the 15th of March, 7 p.m. GMT in the evening. The sun sets about 6:30 or so, and two planets, Mercury and Venus, are visible there. Go a bit further on, another month on to April, and Mercury's gone away then. Mercury and Venus do a little dance several days around that time. So during sort of March, basically, you'll see Mercury and Venus. Sometimes one will be on top of the other, and they get quite close together at one stage. But Mercury's gone by April. Venus goes up a bit higher and slightly north of west, and into May. These times are 9 and 10 p.m. British summertime. At that point again, Venus gets a little bit higher. The Jupiter is at opposition on the 9th of May, and you'll see that by this picture I've got here, Jupiter sits very nicely between Antares and Spica. There are only 4 first magnitude stars pretty much on the ecliptic, and Antares and Spica are 2 of them. Regulus and Aldebaran are the other 2. But Jupiter is sitting between Antares and Spica there, and you'll see really not terribly high up. So although that is the best time to see Jupiter, its opposition is the 9th of May. The time I've deliberately set to 1:24, and you might ask me why I've set it to 1:24. That is actually really midnight. Once you take off the British summertime bit and the offset for the fact that we're 6 degrees west of Greenwich, the local midnight time is 1:24 in the morning, and Jupiter is dead south at that point. But the real star of planets, and again it's quite low I'm afraid, is Mars. And on the 27th of July, Mars is at opposition, again at 1:24 in the morning. And the thing about Mars is that it's the best opposition of Mars since 2003, and which means it will be quite big and quite bright. Unfortunately, quite low down, so it's not that brilliant. I'm just wondering if we'll get a repeat of what happened in 2003, where a certain daily newspaper that rhymes with fail was sort of putting it about that Mars would appear approximately the same size as the full moon there, and that's completely rubbish. It's much smaller. It's a tiny world, and even when it's at its closest, it's 34 million miles away. This one, I think, is actually about 36 million miles away, so it's close but not the closest. But Mars will look quite good in a small telescope, like the one I just showed you from the German supermarket. So that's the planets next year. A lot to look forward to there, but all a bit low down, unfortunately. If you're thinking of emigrating to Australia to look at planets, now would be a good sort of time. I'm just going to recap what I told you last time, because this one, it's tonight. How much of this we're going to get to actually see, I'm not sure. But tonight is the peak of the Geminid meteor shower. What should we say about the meteor shower? There is no moon to speak of. It comes up about 3 o'clock in the morning, I think, but certainly for normal, sensible people, that there is no moon burning out the view as it did last year. Last year the Geminid meteor shower coincided with pretty much a full moon and was a complete washout. But where you need to look is not here. This is the radiant, the Geminid radiant there by Castor and Pollux, but anywhere really sort of about 30 degrees away from that. So anywhere around Orion. I've caught many a Geminid in Orion, or around Taurus, or up near the Seven Sisters, or sometimes even into Perseus here, and certainly Auriga, Capella direction. Or the other way, Leo's a good target for Geminid meteors. And they are best after midnight, just because we're sort of facing into the dust trail of what is unusually the asteroid that causes it. Pretty much every other meteor shower is caused by a comet. This one is caused by an asteroid, 3200 Phaethon, and actually the asteroid itself is making a fairly close pass to us at the weekend. So it's very, very fast. It's about 10th magnitude, so you need to, it's one of those where you need a big telescope and you need to take lots of pictures, and it's the thing that moves against the background stars is what you're looking for. But that asteroid is quite close to us. So that's the Geminid meteor shower. And just while we're on that same piece of sky, I had a nice photograph sent to me by our member Adam Jeffers earlier this evening, and this is just, he was actually doing some photography. I think this is Adam's observatory going on here. He was doing something more serious, but he just took this rather nice wide field view of Orion, and you've got Orion. You can see the colour contrast between Betelgeuse there, which is orange, and Rigel there, which is blue. You can also see, you can follow the belt down to Sirius, brightest star in the sky, and you can see Orion's sword and Orion's head, and over here this star is Procyon, which is fairly close to, I think it's about 11 or 12 light years away. It's fairly nearby, sort of pretty average kind of star. There's a lot of stuff in that kind of area there. If you've ever taken a sort of a long exposure, really long exposure picture there, you can see what first of all appears to be a star cluster, and then if you get a picture of it with the hydrogen alpha on, you can see that it is in fact a huge nebula called the Rosette, and that's sort of approximately just there somewhere. So that's Adam's picture of Orion, and that's all I have to say at the minute on that. So I'm going to bring up the first of our two speakers, Terry. How do I introduce Terry? Terry has been doing this for about 60 years or so, something like that, and he knows pretty much everything there is to know about it, and what makes his contribution to this association so fantastic is he knows pretty much everyone involved in it as well. So just a round of applause please for Terry Mosley, and we'll get him set up.